Hi, everyone who's logging in. We're just getting started in about 2 minutes. So just stay tuned and we'll get started at the top of the hour. Okay. Hi, everyone. We still have some folks trickling in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with our introduction. Thank you for joining this session of our virtual Biodiversity Without Boundaries conference. We're happy to continue to bring these sessions to you on Thursday afternoons all through June and into July. This week, we are continuing our updates from around the network that we started last week. And this week, we'll be hearing from South Carolina, North Carolina, and Arizona. Before I introduce our first speaker, just some housekeeping notes. All participants are muted and you cannot share your video, and you will be muted throughout the entire webinar due to the amount of participants that we have. I'd ask that anyone who has a question to ask any of our panelists use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. So directly underneath the video screen where you see either my face or the presenter's presentation, there's a button that says Q&A. And in there, if you put your questions in there, they will be a part of the permanent record of the meeting. We will hold all questions until the end, so feel free to put your questions in there anytime. And once all three speakers have gotten through their presentations, we will go through the questions. And any questions that we don't get through, I will ask the panelists to answer after the fact, and they will be posted along with this recording of this meeting. So this meeting is being recorded, and it will be available to anyone who wants to view it after the close of the meeting, and will be posted on our website. As an update, next week we are having a presentation from two partner organizations. We will hear from a project in Oklahoma working on monarch butterflies, and we'll also be hearing from the Sustainable Forestry Initiative on a presentation about what do our partners need from our data products. So if you haven't registered for that one, you can register for it on our website. And in 2 weeks, we'll be hosting a presentation on key biodiversity areas, and our speakers for that are to be determined, but you'll get an announcement about that as soon as it's scheduled. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Joe Lemeris. He's the GIS and data manager from the Natural Heritage Program in South Carolina. And he is going to talk about leveraging ArcGIS Enterprise to improve species data collection and accessibility to stakeholders. So take it away, Joe.
Thanks very much. All right. Yeah, so as Allison said, my name is Joe, and I'm the GIS and data manager for South Carolina Heritage Trust Program. So I'll be giving a brief sort of overview about the projects we've been working on over the last year or so to improve upon how we collect and manage and distribute the data that we maintain to our stakeholders by leveraging ArcGIS Enterprise and Esri's Enterprise Advantage program. So there we go. Just a bit of background. South Carolina has generally been a fairly small, low capacity program historically in terms of natural heritage. And we've had a pretty I say straightforward, but sort of manual process about going about project review requests. Very manual, and we had about 200 or so a year. That was the average, at least, when I started a couple of years ago. And depending on the level of project complexity, how many species it could impact and how many other staff need to be brought in, a single review could take potentially 4 or 5 man hours to complete, sometimes less, sometimes more. And depending on how many we had to respond to at any given time, we would take 2 to 4 weeks to get back to people generally. And from a consultant's perspective, the only available data relating to natural heritage has been the static county lists. These that you see here, just kind of on our website. They were kind of cumbersome to update since they were really never tied to any underlying data sets, and it's just a basic HTML table. So yeah, as I mentioned, it's just a very slow manual review process, as our gopher tortoise likes to say. And we had some challenges associated with that. So we had a lot of lack of standardization coming from, all requests were coming through mail, email, different departmental programs would get it. There was no standardized format for submitting spatial information. So we'd get it in a PDF map, a shapefile, a Google Earth coordinates, and things like that. So it was a bit tricky from that perspective. We also had a problem with decentralized data. We weren't really receiving data from all sections of DNR consistently. Sometimes we would get big batch uploads of seasons worth of data at once, and some programs wouldn't provide data at all to us, and that resulted in backlogs and longer entry processes and review times overall. And lastly, we had one of the biggest problems we had was a lack of governance to this data. Historically, we had never really used the very simple sort of system that NatureServe has to determine which species location data should be considered sensitive and protect against poaching and disturbance, and would often share copies of the entire data set to various constituents and other groups, and it resulted in a diminished trust that the program would protect this sensitive data, and as a result was considered out of date and not reliable because we wouldn't be getting the full picture on a regular basis. So we wanted a way to really improve our data quality, protect it from malicious intent, and at the same time allow users to have access to data that they need to do their jobs, all with a very limited staff. So luckily, we did have a few eureka moments. so we have, our ArcGIS enterprise licenses, a lot of agencies do, and we could get 80% of the way toward a more automated set of workflows just with what we already had, but we kind of needed some assistance, a little bit of a push to get over the edge there. And luckily we had a partner that came forward to help us with that. Our State Department of Transportation has, of course, a vested interest in getting up-to-date data in an easily accessible format for them to do their due diligence on their projects. And so they were able to provide us some grant funds to really upgrade some of the systems that we had in place. So our agency was able to upgrade to ArcGIS Enterprise, which, for those of you who aren't familiar, is essentially like putting an ArcGIS online wrapper over a server system on your local infrastructure. And on top of that, we were able to enroll in an Enterprise Advantage program. So just a quick background on this. This was an ideal solution for us because it allows for us to manage our data on local servers and publish reference layers to our portal, which can be included in custom web apps, maps, and field collection methods, just like how ArcGIS Online is available to as well. Another advantage is it allows for us for unlimited allocation of viewer roles, which can be assigned to external partners and given appropriate permissions to view the data. All of this can then be packaged nicely into a customized enterprise site, which is similar to ArcGIS Hub, if you're familiar with that, which allows for our program to tailor how we want the users to experience and interact with the data. So enrolling in the Enterprise Advantage program gave us the ability to really focus our efforts into our priorities and sort of streamline those needs. We had a technical advisor assigned to us, and they helped us consider our overall geospatial strategy while keeping the projects moving forward. So we had two main goals for the first year: to create a custom tool that was producing an automated review reports for species of concern, stand up an enterprise site, and as well stand up an enterprise site to display these and other tools relating to natural heritage in South Carolina. So we worked closely with our team over the last year, and at the end of April, we were able to roll out the hub site and some of these tools, and this is kind of what it looks like. So the goal, the goal of this was to be a one-stop shop for all things natural heritage related. Users can quickly identify stats on tracked species, access public survey forms, and more secure content that needs login credentials. We also enhanced our county lists by using Operations Dashboard. So users can select on a county and identify species found within it, filter by listing status, and more information on species through the NatureServe Explorer site. So the best part about all this is that the tables and statistics are updated on these sites as data is input into our databases on the back end. It's all connected. So it really saves time on updating things. Sites have enormous potential for usefulness of conveying geospatial data to the public, and really started spurring conversations within our agency to expand upon our sites. And we're talking about trying to create a site specifically for our state wildlife action plan coming up in the future. So that's one thing that may be on the docket there. And so we're also able to monitor when people request access through this site. So we can, select pending requests, link out to assign that user a login and their appropriate permissions, and mark it as complete. And it allows for peace of mind that, the stakeholders are assigned the right data for their needs and, not anything additional. Once they receive login credentials, they can then access the partners or environmental professionals site pages, which contain some disclaimers, tools, and tutorials about how to use the reviewer tools. This is an example of our species reviewer tool where somebody can, enter in a project area and, along with supplemental information, will produce an automated report. It's important to note here that we are able to now filter out sensitive species. We were able to go through all of that with our biologists, and non-sensitive species do not appear in the map, but they do appear in the reports. So this is what's produced here is using layouts in ArcGIS Pro. You can design layouts and produce reports like this where you get tables of species found within a site or nearby, and produce best management practices and survey recommendations based on what species are found nearby, and things like wetlands, soil types, and other attributes. And finally, once the project is submitted, the appropriate staff are then notified via email, and the project boundary information is populated in a dashboard where we can track incoming requests by county and project type. So DNR staff can easily identify which ones have come in the last 30 days, for example, and identify, easily respond to the requester's email for further information if we need more. And we've already seen an uptick in the number of users submitting requests. This is only a few months, actually not even a few months in, and we've already gotten upwards of 140 reviews for the year submitted through this system. So it's really reducing the wait times for the users and allowing us to respond more quickly if we need to. So it's been really beneficial, and it allows us to focus more on high value projects as well. So really, I mean, we're excited to start the next second. We've been able to renew for a second year of our Advantage program starting in May. And we have plans to continue building out on these applications and expanding on our sites pages, and design new workflows around things like, hopefully we're trying to get into species distribution modeling. So we've been talking with Regan and trying to coordinate with NatureServe to figure out how best to design some sort of workflow that works for us, while thinking about the bigger picture as well. And, expanding upon more sites pages, like I said, to convey the data that we have in a better way. So if any other programs are interested in chatting more, I'm happy to talk with you. My email address is there, and that's about it.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
A couple questions come in, which we'll take at the end. And just a reminder, if you have questions for Joe or any of the panelists, to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So next, we will hear from Jame Amoroso, who's the Conservation Information Specialist with the North Carolina Heritage Program. And she is going to talk about the partnership with the North Carolina Biodiversity Project. So go ahead, Jame.
All right, thank you, Allison. Again, I'm Jame Amoroso with the North Carolina Natural Heritage Program. I've been with the program since 1998 when I started as botanist there. I'm pleased to have this opportunity to participate in this virtual Biodiversity Without Boundaries session to talk about my program, as well as the North Carolina Biodiversity Project. As this is a NatureServe event, most of you are going to be familiar with methods and network of natural heritage programs, natural area inventories, and data centers, which each have their own history and directives within their respective subnational units while using a shared methodology. So I'm going to review these aspects as they apply to North Carolina, and then introduce the North Carolina Biodiversity Project. The North Carolina Heritage Program's primary purpose is to provide assistance in establishing nature preserves as legislated by the Nature Preserves Act, first passed in 1985. And in order to identify and prioritize areas for protection, we gather and store information about elements of biodiversity, plants, animals, natural communities, from many sources. Staff perform surveys and inventories, natural history collections, other state and federal agencies, conservation organizations, research projects, individuals, and it goes on. Information comes from many sources. And these elements have global and subnational ranks that are used to prioritize protection. So information about distribution, range, number of populations, size of populations, trends, threats is used to calculate ranks using the NatureServe definitions consistent across US, Canada, Latin America. But this accurate element ranking at any level relies on current and accurate data. This is one of the ways that the program shares information it collects. North Carolina's conservation planning tool provides a means for synthesizing and sharing the priorities of states' conservation agencies and organizations with planners in government to inform decisions and guide conservation efforts statewide. Provides information about the relative priority of aquatic and terrestrial habitats, landscape functions, and connectivity based in part on elements of biodiversity. Every 2 years, the program publishes lists of rare plants and animals in North Carolina, and all of this relies on current and accurate data. With that in mind, I'm going to introduce the North Carolina Biodiversity Project. The mission of the Biodiversity Project is to promote public interest in the state's native species and ecosystems, but providing an accessible source of information, as well as the opportunity to contribute new information of scientific and conservation value. Although this project's scope overlaps with other community science projects, an important aspect of the Biodiversity Project is the involvement of experts to curate the checklists and the submitted records. The Biodiversity Project is rooted in the early 1990s informal collaboration between State Parks naturalist Tom Howard and Heritage Program zoologist Harry LeGrand to maintain and publish a checklist of the butterflies of North Carolina. By 1994, that list was available to the public through an online download of a PDF from a site hosted by North Carolina State Parks. Around 1996, a bird list was also available. And in 2010, dragonflies and damselflies were added. Checklists continued to be added on an informal basis until 2015, when the North Carolina Biodiversity Project was created as we see it now. I'm going to move on to the website now so you can see what I'm talking about. The checklist continued to be added on an informal basis until 2015, when the North Carolina Biodiversity Project was created, along with this website. And in order to represent the interest of the growing set of authors, as well as bringing Southern Conservation Partners as the project fiscal sponsor, the Articles of Association were created. Greater detail on the history is available on the website, as well as the Articles of Association and Memoranda of Agreement. I became involved in 2018 because the project provided an opportunity to share a state checklist of bryophytes. At present, the project has grown to 20 taxonomic groups, most recent being the Myxomycota slime molds of North Carolina. Each group is recognized as a separate entity, but working cooperatively toward common goals. The importance of maintaining the viability of the natural world, building an interest and appreciation in our native species and ecosystems, and raising public awareness of the need to increase conservation efforts. I also want to mention there are several groups that complement the Biodiversity Project and whose information is not duplicated by the project. Amphibians and Reptiles of North Carolina are hosted by Davidson College, Flora of the Southern and Mid-Atlantic states that are hosted at UNC Herbarium, and several others are also linked at the bottom of the page. Even where outside websites exist for a given taxonomic group, there is value in presenting species lists on this site that provide both up-to-date taxonomy as well as a unified approach to assessing conservation needs. NatureServe ranks are included with the checklists when available. Moving on, the project has accumulated a diverse group of experts who, for the most part, donate their time and experience to further the conservation of North Carolina's biodiversity, especially for some of the less charismatic species. Expert curated information about species distribution is essential to conservation planning. They supply information obtained through their project website to the Natural Heritage Program, along with recommendations about which species are of significant conservation concern. While we're looking through the group contributors, I'm going to highlight some and describe some examples of information exchange. Moths are an often overlooked but are an essential component of a healthy ecosystem. The moth team is composed of Steve Hall, Bo Sullivan, Jim Petranka, Parker Backstrom, and Merrill Lynch and Tom Howard. I have all participated in developing this. Submissions to this website are verified by the team, and information on this website, such as this particular species, Catocalo herodius, are provided to the Natural Heritage Program and used in our published rare species list. The vascular plant website has been developed by Harry LeGrand, Bruce Sorey, and webmaster Tom Howard. Bruce Sorey's review of herbarium specimens for county range maps has revealed new county records as well as erroneous distributions in some cases. This information is shared with the program, and in some cases the process works in the other direction. A new county record can be reported to the Natural Heritage Program, such as one for McBridea. In this case, the Natural Heritage Program received information about a new record in Tyrrell County, which then the project was able to add to their website along with the other information on their website. As you can see, it's something like a field guide, but is specific to North Carolina and North Carolina habitats. Moving back to the PowerPoint. In recognition that both the Natural Heritage Program and the Biodiversity Project have goals of furthering conservation in North Carolina and providing information to North Carolinians, the Memorandum of Agreement was developed to support the exchange of information between the North Carolina Natural Heritage Program and the North Carolina Biodiversity Project, because access to current, accurate data is essential to making sound decisions about conservation. Thank you for your attention, and a giant thank you to the many experts throughout North Carolina and elsewhere who have contributed their knowledge to protect the world's biodiversity. And thanks much to the cooperators, North Carolina State Parks, the Insect Museum, Southern Conservation Partners for their support of the North Carolina Biodiversity Project. And be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. We're continuing to monitor the Q&A box. So if you do have questions for Jamie, put them in there and we'll get to them in just a few minutes. Next up is Sabra Tonn. She is the HDMS program supervisor for the Arizona Fish and Game Department, and she will be talking about a presentation called Tide Won't Clean Your Data, but this tool will, efficiencies in data visualization and QCs. Over to you, Sabra.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to discuss a little bit about a new tool that we have created that is specifically designed towards people who want to submit data to us or are required to submit their data to our program. And we've been working with another section of our agency that is in charge of the state scientific collecting licenses. So basically anyone who wants to handle animals in the state of Arizona, conduct surveys with playback tapes, or are taking animals in any method, whether it be live take, banding birds, or including salvage dead on road, need to have a state scientific collecting license. And in the past, data came in to us in an array of formats. They really didn't have any specificity in their reporting requirements early on. So we would get things in Word documents, Excel, hard copy reports, PDFs, etc. And we did not always have precise locations that had been submitted. They were often submitted in various coordinate systems and data. It was a mix of what was common animals versus rare species that were being tracked by the Heritage Program. And we often had to contact the permittee for clarification. And one of the things that we wanted to do was kind of go back and digitize all the data back into the late 1990s for help in our state wildlife action plan to try to do some analysis on distribution over time to try to look at trends and status changes. And in order to do that, we had to go back and digitize all of these data. And with that process, we decided to make a change. And so this was actually identified under our agency's lean process of total quality or lean procedures as one of our pain points. And what we realized is we really have very little say in how our data come into us in general, but this was one way that we thought we could make a big change. So we worked with the work unit that's the process owner for the scientific collecting licenses. And it is a way to give the permittees a chance to QC their data before submitting it to us. And we wanted also to force them to make corrections and put things into our taxonomy. Even though we created a drop-down for taxonomy, we found that people in Excel documents could override that, and so we would get things in various formats. The technology program that we're using is kind of leveraging what we had built with our dashboard. So some of you have seen our dashboard presentation about, 18 months to 2 years ago, which allows us to view multiple data sets, including our point observation data, our element occurrence records, our VertNet data, iNaturalist, and SciNet data, all kinds of different data into one format. So we use Auth0 for the login authentication, and this allows us to set up the data users with strong passwords. It also allows us to pick what data sets they can see moving forward. It is in our shiny web applications using tables and leaflet packages. It's running on an Amazon cloud under a Linux instance. It uses Postgres GIS and database, and it does use an Excel template for the data upload. And that template was something that we originally established through one of the Kestrel templates. So going back a number of years, we did pick one of the Kestrel templates as our starting point. So we did create our own URL for them to submit their data. They get this Auth0 sign-in that they would need to use to start this. And we can also, under this Auth0 authentication through the admin pages, if, for instance, a permittee with Fish and Wildlife Service has been entering data and then they maybe change personnel, we can add different accounts to it so that they have access to their data continually, even if they have a different name on their permit. So this is kind of just the admin screen. So this is the interface that allows us to set up accounts both on our dashboard and our scientific collecting license app. We can pick what data sets each user is allowed to see through the apps. So on the left side, lower left, you see the dashboard user. We can allow people to only see based on taxonomic groups or specific species, and then the submission app info on the right shows what they have entered in the past so that they always have access to all of the data that they have submitted over the decades. So this is just a very basic welcome page. The application is fairly simple. You can download the template, add your data, review the data, submit the data, and then download your data that you've submitted over time as a geo package or a CSV file. There are FAQs, and a walkthrough is a brief tutorial with some quick basic steps. So in uploading the data, when you browse to upload your data and you pick the file, it allows you to pick which file you want, and then it tells you that your upload is successful. This is the data visualized on a map, and you can see previously submitted data. You can filter by species, single species or multiple, or by year. It will alert you as to how many records you are submitting, how many have errors, and let you move points by dragging them or fix them in a QC portion of the application. You can also change the base maps so that you have better visualization tools. So here is one way that you can fix your errors. You can, when you submit the data, it's going to run through some process and it's going to give you some feedback on what the issues are with your errors. So in this sample, you can see that there's a spelling error that's consistent through the scientific name. And in this instance, you can just click the Change All button and it will change all of those at one time so that you don't have to go in and hand change each one. It will also tell you if you have an issue with a date or a coordinate system and what that general issue may be. It'll tell you whether it's a format, that it's expecting to see something, and that it's not what you submitted. You can also pick the View All Records button and look at all of those records at one time. It will show you the records that are highlighted in the light pink, and then the darker pink will show you what field or column within that row is actually throwing the error. And in this case, we check the box for show only errors so that you only see those few records that have errors associated with them. You can view all your data over time for one user. So this is a sample of somebody who's been submitting scientific collecting license data all the way back to 2004. So they have the ability to look at all of their data over time. That way, if they want to go back and see what they submitted or where they might have surveyed in the past, so that they can pick new areas to focus their research. You can get any or more info on any one point simply by clicking that point on the map, and it'll give you the dialog box with some detailed information from the attributes in the spreadsheet. The FAQs just give a little more detail on why the tool exists, how the data get used, and offer a get more help. And we've found that a lot of the users tend to give us better data when they know how the data are being used. On the walkthrough, this, I'm not going to scroll down, but this gives you some general basics on what we're expecting to see and how they can download their data, upload their data, review it, fix errors, etc. There's also an export data feature so that any user can go in and either download all of their data, they can download just specific years or and export it as a CSV or a geo package. So this allows them, even if they don't have GIS capabilities on their end, to export as a geo package to send to somebody if they're being requested for their data in a GIS format. And you can pick and choose what years that you want to include in your export. So some of the benefits, we're seeing benefits beyond just getting better quality data. Now that permittees can see their data and understand how we're using it, they're more willing to provide other data that's not required under their permits. It also has made other work units more willing to submit their data to us. So even though they're technically required to submit their data, a lot of times they forget or it's their lowest priority. But with this being conjoined with our dashboard application, they're starting to use the dashboard, and then they look at it and they say to us, oh, but you don't have our data. And that gives us a dialogue to actually have them submit their data in a way that's pretty user-friendly and fixed the errors before they get to us. We're happy to share the code if others are interested in getting the code that goes along with either the dashboard or this permit application. We are starting to use this not just for scientific collecting license data, but also for folks that just want to submit data that they would be submitting either through iNaturalist or through other means. They can use the template and continually add their observations and submit it in chunks throughout the year. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. And I know that at this point, they'll go back to try to answer questions for all three presentations.
Thank you, Sabra. If you have questions for Sabra, go ahead and put them in the chat now. Right now, we have some other questions that came in that were answered by the panelists, but so that everyone can get the benefit of the answer, I'm just gonna go through them again. And Joe and Jame, if you wouldn't mind just verbally giving the answer that you put in the record, that would be great. So Jame, I'm going to start with your question. Are the species lists from the North Carolina Biodiversity Project connected via API to national or global scale databases such as Bison or GBIF?
As far as I know, they are not. That is a question I'll have to ask the webmaster, Tom Howard.
Okay. There was a question for Joe. What is the dollar amount estimated to get this up and running? Do you charge for user access or per report?
Yeah, so I think, let me just find where I wrote it down so I don't mess up. Here we go. Yeah, so the upfront cost for a license for an advanced license of Arcgis Enterprise is, I think, a little under $40,000. It's probably $38,000 or so. And for a year's subscription to the Enterprise Advantage program is, I think, $89,000. And that includes your technical advisor for the year, as well as, you know, an allocated number of project credits that they do everything in credits, Esri does. So it's you know, a year's worth of technical credits for getting projects done. And so that's what we used our grant funds for. And then annual maintenance for the license for Enterprise is around $10,000. Oh, and in terms of charging, the way that our agency interprets our FOIA laws, I've been told we can't charge for anything. So we may in the future if that interpretation changes, but for now we kind of do this as a free service.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sabra, there's a comment for you that would be interesting to hear your take on. Lindsay Wise says, I'm amazed you have been successful getting people to QC their own data before submissions. Great to hear.
Yeah, we were actually impressed. People tend to not even edit it in the application where they have the chance to do it, but they're actually going back to their template, correcting their data in their template, and then re-upload so that they know that they have the better quality data for their own use moving forward. One of the best parts is just being able to see it on the map and zooming in. They can see whether they have a wrong projection. Things might be supposed to line up with a stream and they're just off. And being able to click and drag that point to move it, and then the Postgres database actually generates the correct coordinate for them on the fly. Has been a bonus to them as well, so that they know their data are cleaner when they're using it in other research papers and other formats. So it's been a great tool, but the visualization is all what's been making it better. Before we had it visualized on a map, if we contacted them to try to get it corrected, it was like pulling teeth. This has just been amazing how responsive the people have been to fixing their data.
Great. Suzanne Carrier, I think this one is for you as well, Sabra. Can we get a copy of the forms and code?
Yes, we're happy to share the code. I can, if you can email me, and I will get you the link to the GitHub where you can get access to the code. And I can send you a copy of the template that we're using as well.
Great. I will put the speakers' email addresses in the Q&A that gets posted on the website. So it'll be in there if you didn't jot it down during the presentation. Going back to some of the previous questions, this one's for Joe. By using the ArcGIS Enterprise versus only ArcGIS Online, does this allow your agency to have a reliable cost for hosting the system, regardless of how many users enroll for access?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that, Larry, because I meant to mention it in the presentation. But yeah, we don't really, because ArcGIS Enterprise doesn't rely on a credit system the way that the online system does. The advanced version comes with I think it's 55 creator roles, which can do anything that you want them to, edit and publish and all sorts of things, and then unlimited viewer roles. So you don't have to worry about credits for named users, and you don't have to worry about credits for storage of data, because it's all on your local system. So it does seem to be much more reliable cost going forward.
And then one last question for you, Joe. Have you attempted to automate the environmental review analysis via the tool, or is this more a means of gather and respond to requests for project reviews?
Yeah, and it's a little both. So we set it up so that for certain projects, it's sort of intended to be a substitute for our manual review response. So, for smaller impacts, not impacting species, and things like that, they will be sent the reports directly to their email address. Whereas if a project does need further review, and we work with our Office of Environmental Programs at DNR pretty closely to determine which projects those should be. For those, the reports go directly to our Office of Environmental Programs, and then they have the opportunity to respond further. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's all the open. Lori says thanks. That's all the open questions we have right now. We have a few more minutes if anybody wants to type in any questions, and I'll give it a few minutes. And while we're waiting, I'll ask the panelists if they have anything that they wanted to add that they wanted to just touch base on before we close. Are you being polite or are you
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to the network.
Great. We're glad to have you, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks.
Sabra? No, okay.
Yep, no, I just reiterate, thanks for the opportunity to share. One of the best parts of being part of the network is leveraging work other people have done so that it reduces costs for you.
Absolutely, here.
Okay. Well, I don't know anyone who ever said, I wish those people would have talked longer. So with that, I'm going to give everyone 10 minutes back in your day. And I hope you're all enjoying these webinars so far, and we hope to see you back next week. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks to the panelists.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.